Hey, what's up guys? So in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to set up a basic settings menu, and this will include an option button for your resolutions. So at the end of this video, you should have something like what I have set up right here, where we can press escape to pop up our options menu. And we have this one drop down box where we can select what resolution we'd like to play our game in. And if I set the resolution, it will obviously change the size of the window and also move it so that the window is in the center of the screen. Now keep in mind that this video will not go into all the details of really setting up your settings menu, but I will kind of provide a basic structure on how to get things going and some best practices for how I like to set things up. So I'm going to go ahead and delete what I already have in this project, and I'll be right back with you guys in a second. Okay, so we're back in an empty project. All I have right here is my game, and when I click on the run button, nothing happened. So there are a couple things we need to set up before we get started coding, and I'll show you that really quick. So go up to your project settings, and we're going to go into the General tab. And first things first, we want to go to the Windows section under Display, and we have a couple options here. First of all, you'll see the size of your viewport. So you have viewport width and height, and this is kind of like your target resolution. So when you test your game out, as you can see, like if I play the game here, the default resolution is going to be whatever you set in this initial viewport width and height. Now we are going to be changing this value. So this is kind of what you want to target, and this is also this outline. You can see this little blue rectangle. This is kind of showing what your game is going to look like. So if you're making any UI, you would see that this is like the screen, and then this will get scaled when we actually change our game's resolution. Now we have two more properties here. We have the stretch mode and the stretch aspect. And for the mode, we want to set it to viewport. Now I've actually already done this, but if we set it to viewport, then Godot will attempt to stretch our entire viewport to fit the window. If you do not set this to viewport, when we expand our game, it will just extend our game viewport, so to speak. So for basically all situations where you're developing a game, you'll want to set this to viewport. And then for the aspect, we're just going to set it to keep. And this will keep our aspect ratio as intended. Now once we have these properties set, we also want to go to the input map, and inside of here we're going to make a new action called toggle_settings, and we're going to assign a new button to this, and this will be the escape key. When we click OK, we now have a new action, and I'm actually going to copy the name for this just so we don't forget it later, but now we can start creating our scripts. So the first thing we need is an auto load script. I've made a scripts folder down here, and I'm going to make a new folder under here for auto loads, and we're going to right click in this folder and create a new script, and I'm just going to call this GUI_autoload. And we want to set this as an autoload script. If you don't know what that is, just go up to your project settings, go to the autoload tab, and if we load in this script, which is under the GUI autoload, we're going to add it as just GUI all caps. And now when we run the game, if we go to the remote tab, you can see that Godot has instantiated a new node called GUI at the root. And this is going to be helpful for all of our graphical user interface nodes, as we can stick them on their own canvas layer. And speaking of canvas layers, we do want to set all of our GUI components to be on a canvas layer. Now we can do this if we open up our GUI autoload script, and instead of extending node here, and I'm actually going to zoom in just a bit, we're going to extend canvas layer. And now if we save this and run our game again, go to the remote tab, and we now have a canvas layer. And the reason we did this is because now that it's a canvas layer, any nodes that are a child of that layer are going to be drawn on top of the rest of our game. So we can change the index of this layer and draw all of our UI on top of the rest of our game, which is very helpful. Now the basic way I want to set up our GUI is we're going to reference all of our UI nodes inside of this script, and then when we start the game, we're going to add them as children of this script, and then we can easily access them anywhere in the game by calling GUI.getNode or assigning them from a reference inside of a variable. Now to do this, we need a new variable. This will be called GUI components. And this is going to be just a basic array, and we're only going to need one entry in here, but for that entry it's actually going to be a scene. So the scene is going to be our escape menu, which is going to be the one that we pop up to go to our settings. And we actually need to make a new node at the top, and we're going to make a control node. We're going to rename this to settings menu. And once we save the scene, we're going to be able to use the path inside of this variable so that we can create it on runtime. Now to save this, we just go into the scene, hit Control S, and I already made a folder, but just go into the scenes folder, and I made a GUI components folder and a settings menu folder, and I'm just going to stick it right in there. And now if we go into our file explorer, we can copy this path. If we right click, copy path, and then if we go back into our GUI autoload script, we simply paste the path as a string inside of this array. Now after we've done that, we do need to define a bunch of resolutions. So I've already typed all these resolutions out, so I'm just going to copy and paste them. And I will put the entire string down below in the description if you don't want to type this out either. You can just copy and paste this entire variable, but all I'm doing is defining a new dictionary variable with all of our common resolutions and vector2i's as their values. And we're going to use this in our settings menu script later on, but for now I just want to make sure that our autoload is completely set up. So we need to define a ready function, so we're going to type function underscore ready. And inside of here we need to iterate through all of our GUI components and instantiate one of each of these scenes. So we're going to say for I in GUI components, and then we're going to say var new scene is equal to load I dot instantiate, and then we will add a child, and the child will be this new scene. And then lastly we want to say new scene dot hide. And the reason we're hiding this is just because with our settings menu we don't want it to be shown when we start the game, but we're going to toggle that with a key press. Now for the key press we need to define an input function. So we're going to say function underscore input, and for the event we can just put an underscore here to null it out, and then we're going to check if capital input for the class dot is action just pressed, and the action is going to be the toggle settings action that we've defined. And if that is pressed, we're going to get a reference to the settings menu. So we're going to say var settings menu is equal to get underscore node, and the node is going to be our settings menu. And it's not actually inside of the scene yet, since this will all be instantiated upon runtime. But the name is the same as the scene name here. So the path would just be this scene name here. So we can just copy the name here and paste it in the path, and that's literally all it is. Now that we have a reference to the settings menu, we can say settings menu dot visible, and we're going to set it equal to the same line but the opposite. So we're setting settings menu dot visible equal to not settings menu visible, and then right after that we're going to do another check here if settings menu dot visible, and this is where we're going to call settings menu dot update button values. And we haven't actually defined this method yet, so we're going to copy the name, and we're going to need to define this inside of the settings menu script. But we haven't made the settings menu script either. So let's save this and we'll make the settings menu script now. So I'm going to go into my 2D view just so we verify we're in the settings menu scene. And I'm just going to click on the new script button, and I'm going to actually save this inside of our scripts folder. So we're going to go to scripts, GUI components, settings menu, and if you don't have these folders you can just create them, and I'm going to save it as settingsmenu.gd. Now we're going to create this and it will open it up, but inside of here we're going to need to define a few things that will require an option button. And this option button is what's going to allow the user to actually set the resolution. So we need to define that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new panel as a child of this, and we're going to go up to the anchor button and set the preset to a full rectangle. And this will cover our entire screen, and then we're going to add a hbox, and we're going to set this to a full rect as well. And then we're also going to add a VBox container. Inside of the layout, we're going to set the container sizing to expand. And you don't have to set it up this way, but this will kind of ensure that we put all of our nodes in the middle of the screen. And if we add any nodes in the future, this will be easy to kind of align them correctly. But basically, inside of this VBox container, I'm going to add a label. And for the text, I'm just going to input settings, and we're going to make sure to center it horizontally. And then for the label settings, I will actually just go in here, and I want to increase the size of this font quite a bit. Under this label, not as a child, we're going to add it as a sibling. We need to add a new option button. And for this option button, I want to go into the layout. We're going to set a custom minimum size, which is going to be a height of, let's say, 100. And error will go to let's do 50. And then a minimum width of 200. And now in the container sizing, we want to set it to shrink center and shrink begin. And this will place it right under here. Now we could also add some other labels to this so that we know it's the resolution we're changing, but I'm not going to go too in depth with this, as this is kind of where you would customize it for your own game, but this is all we'll need initially. So next up, we want to get a reference to this option button in our settings menu script. So I'm going to open the settings menu, and I'm going to drag the option button and hold Control, and it will give us a new onReady var for this option button. And I'm going to rename this actually to resolutions _ option button. And inside of here, we want to first go through all of our existing resolutions and add them as items to this option button. So in an option button, an item is just like an entry that you can select. And for the resolutions, we need to get it from this variable inside of our autoload script. So basically, we're going to make this new function, and it will be called add resolutions. And inside of here, it's going to be pretty simple. We're going to say for r in, and we want to get a resolution. So we're going to type all caps GUI, and this is our autoload dot resolutions. And since we're getting the specific entry for this, then we can just call resolutions option button dot add item. And the item we will add is just going to be r, since that is the index we are on. Now we want to call this right when we start the game out. So we're going to say function _ ready, and we're going to call add resolutions. And now if you run the game, you will get a list of all your resolutions. But we actually can't run the game yet because there is an error here still. We're trying to call this update button values method on this script, and we don't actually have it yet. So we're going to make that method. I'm going to go back into our autoload, and I'm going to copy this name so we don't have any typos. Back in our settings menu script, we're going to say function update button values. And inside of here, all we have to do is iterate through all of the nodes that we want to update in our settings menu, and we're just going to set their current values to our current settings. And this is like if you maybe started your game at 1920 by 1080 and you went into your menu and you wanted your set current resolution to be 1920 by 1080, and this way the player could see like they would verify, oh, okay, my game is set to this resolution. If you don't do this, then it will always be set to the first option for all of our option buttons, and that would be 4K or 3840 by 2160. And obviously the player would get confused and they would try to reset it, which wouldn't really do anything. So we just want to make sure that we are setting our initial values when they open the settings menu. So the way we're going to do this for the resolution, and you'll have to kind of define how you want to do this for each different setting in your game, but we're going to say var window size string. And we just need to get a string for the window size so that we can reference the desired entry in our resolutions. So the string is going to be equal to str to convert this to a string. And we're going to say get _ window dot size dot x, and then we're going to make another argument in here, and this will be string x, and this is so that we can join the x and y position together, or the x and y size together, with a x string here, and this will put this complete string for our lookup. And then the third argument will obviously be the same thing. We're going to do get window.size.y. And this will get our width times our height as a string. And now that we have the string, we can say var resolutions underscore index. And in order to find the index of what item we want to set the option button to, we need to get GUI dot resolutions dot keys dot find, and we will be finding the window size string. And now that we have the index, all we need to do is get this resolutions option button, and we need to set selected equal to our resolution index. And then when we open up that menu, it will set our resolution to the current correct index so that the player can verify that their resolution is correctly set. Now there's one more thing we have to do inside of here, and that is actually change the resolution. So to do that, we're going to go back to our option button inside of our scene tree. We're going to go into the node tab, and we're going to connect a signal, and that is going to be item selected. So we're going to double click that, connect it to settings menu.gd, and it will appear right here as a method. And inside of here, we just need to do 3 basic lines. So the first one is going to be defining a key variable, and this will be equal to resolution option button dot get item text, and we just need to get the text of the index of the button that got selected, and we have the index handy as an argument here, so just stick that in there. And then we need to say get window dot set size, and we're going to set the size equal to capital GUI for our auto load again, dot resolutions, and the entry is going to be based on key. And now after that, we technically have this all working. If we go ahead and run the game, we can press escape, it pops up our settings menu, and I'm going to set my resolution to 1920 by 1080, and the window will adapt correctly. But as you can see, there is kind of a offset. So if I set this to a higher resolution, it will kind of extend and the window will not be centered on my monitor. And we can really easily fix this with a basic center window function. Now, I was actually doing research for this tutorial beforehand, and I found a great video by Chaff Games, and I'm going to pop him up on the screen right now just to promote his work, but he makes really great Godot tutorials, and I actually got this method from one of his videos, so I'm just going to basically copy that method, but just wanted to give the credit there. But essentially, all we need to do is, inside of our autoload script, we're going to make this new method here, and this will be called function center window, and this is going to center our window on the monitor. Now there's a few lines we're going to need, but the first thing we need to do in here is get the center of our screen. So we're going to say var screen center, and we're setting this equal to our display server dot screen get position, and we're going to add our position to display server dot screen underscore get, and I'm going to scroll out a second, size, and then we're going to divide our size by 2. And then before we move the window, we have to get the size of our window. So we're going to say var window size and set this equal to get window dot get size with decorations. And then lastly, we set the position of the window. So we're going to say get underscore window dot set position, and the position is going to be screen center minus window size, and we're going to divide that by 2. Now after you've created this method, we just need to call it inside of wherever we set our resolution. So I'm going to copy the name of this, go back into our settings menu, and then whenever we set our window size, we're going to also call GUI dot center window. And now when you run the game, we should be able to open our settings, change our resolution, and no matter what we set it to, it will center our window on the monitor. And so we can drag it up here, and it will always center it, which is pretty helpful. Now you could code in some stuff around this, but I really like this behavior. And there's one more thing that you may notice before we finish up here, and that is if you go to the project settings, the default and initial resolution is 1152 by 648. And you might have noticed that we actually don't have that resolution in our list of resolutions. So initially, when we open up our resolutions menu, there will not be an item selected, and that is because the index is out of bounds. It's -1, so it could not actually find a correct fitting resolution to display here. Now, if you did want to fix this, there's a couple options. You could either set your default resolution to something that is contained inside of this list, or we could just add this resolution to our list. And I'm going to go that route. So to add a resolution, we just make a new string, and our resolution was 1152 by 648, I believe. Yep. So we type 1152 by 648, and this will be a vector to I. And I don't know what the behavior is here. And I think I ran into some sort of a glitch in the Godot editor with this indentation, but I'm just going to ignore it. Just define our vector as the same resolution. Now if we save this, and we're using the default resolution, we can open up the settings menu and see that that option is in fact selected. So there's that quick workaround, but that will conclude this video. If you guys do want to see more videos about how to set up settings in your game, I am planning on making a few more tutorials on this project for things like setting up full screen or VSync or different environment effects. But make sure to leave a comment if you want to see a specific setting, and I'll try to get working on that video. But thanks for watching the video, and I hope you learned something new. If you do want to see more tutorials and things like this, consider subscribing to the channel, as it does help a lot. But thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.